First thing I'm gonna do is get this 4-inch inner diameter pipe that I got, and I'm going to cut this in half, and this is going to be what I call a pipe C-notch. If I had a little bit more space, I would do a actual step notch like I did on the hard body. However, the step notch requires you to kind of build up a little bit, that way you get a little bit more material on there. But since I'm going to be building my racks for my bed and they're going to go right up here, I don't have too much space. I have about 1 inch from the frame to the bed, and that 1 inch is going to get taken up with the rack, so I can't go anything over the factory chassis. But I do want it to drop a little bit more, and you could probably already see my U-bolts have already been making contact with this. Kind of dangerous because eventually the U-bolt will wear out. I believe the factory axle is maybe like 3.5 inches. This is 4-inch ID. You can see it's a little bit bigger. So that is essentially going to sit like that. I got all of them kind of sketched out. I used this masking tape that happened to be 4 inches when that's what I got. So I measured up my center line. I measured from the axle, and I also went off from where I was already hitting with a U-bolt, so I measured that. That was my center line. But now that I have the frame nice and sturdy, you can see that it's not going anywhere. The wheels are barely touching on the ground, so there is weight distributed everywhere. I'm gonna start getting to cutting now. I know it's not the cleanest cut since I am still trying to get used to the plasma cutter. So I got this all prepped and ready to go. Once again, like I said, the cut is not perfect, but it's good enough, and the gap is actually manageable. I got the pipe all welded up in there, so that's all nice and strong. Like I said, I left this little lip, that way the 3/16 plate can sit on there. I think I'm going to cut the 3/16 on top of this weld, that way I can actually get some weld to adhere to the stock frame, the plate, and the new pipe that I put in there. That way it's all kind of together. Regardless though, it's all going to get welded on top and on the bottom, so that's going to be on there pretty strong. But now I'm going to quickly cut this out. Should be a breeze with the plasma cutter. Got this side all grinded down and ready to go, ready to weld. I just have to place that in there like that and burn her in. C-notch is all done, that's ready to go. Next step is to extend the frame. Once we extend the frame, then I'll be able to box everything in. There's a lot of different ways to kind of go about this, and some people don't even extend it. Some people just get like this 2-inch bar, they slide it in here so that it's flat, and they weld that in. You can see it looks like they kind of already did that because there's some weld right here. So I think that's kind of what they did, slid that in there. I'll give you guys an example as to what you could do. It's a lot easier. You could do something like that, and then over here just cut it so it fits in there and weld that in, and that could be the rear of your frame. Essentially what I'm going to do is right here I have some 2-inch square tube, 1/4 inch wall thickness, and this I got a 5-foot section. They're both 5-foot sections, but this is a 2-inch square tube, 1/4 inch wall. This is a 2.5 square tube, 1/4 inch wall, oversized. So if you're gonna do the same setup that I'm doing, be sure to get oversized. What that means essentially is the weld on the inside, the seam, is grinded out. That way that one can actually slide in here, because if you were to get just your standard 2.5 inch, 1/4 inch wall, it looked like it would fit, but since it has a weld on the inside, it wouldn't go unless you would grind the whole thing, and it's kind of impossible to grind the whole weld inside just using basic hand tools. So this is going to slide in all the way inside until it hits on this little bend where the frame starts to go up. As soon as it hits, that's as far as I'm going to go, and then it's going to stick out 3.5 inches right here. I'm going to cut it, do the same on the other side. I've seen some people where they just weld onto here, but if you think about it, your last stage, which is your dump, all the weight is on this bar back here. So if you just weld it back here, this puts a lot of stress on your frame. So the way I'm doing it, it's gonna put all the weight on the extension that I'm doing, but that extension is gonna go all the way inside. So it's gonna kind of distribute the stress on the whole rear half of the frame over here. And on top of all that, it's all gonna be boxed in. So it should be pretty strong, at least I hope. But now, since this is 2-inch square tube and the frame is roughly 2 3/4 inch, it's gonna look a little funky, actually very funky, the fact that it's a skinny tube coming out. So I'm gonna get the 2.5 inch cut a little 3-inch section, which is going to slide over that, and it's going to match up kind of like the frame. Now that we got these in, we'll measure roughly 3-inch because of the weld. Now that we got these cut to a 3-inch, now we can slide these over like so. And you can see that it flows a little better now. Obviously we can move this around since it is a 2-inch inside of a 2 3/4, so there is a slight gap, you can see. But I think that looks way better than this, because to me that just looks dumb. I already got the templates made over here. I even have my little extension piece over here where the other tube is going to go. I have this sheet of 3/16 plate. This is a 2 foot by a 4 foot section. Adrian actually hooked me up with this. He sold it to me for dirt cheap. So I hope that this is enough. Since the sheet I'm using is only 4 feet long, and from the outside to about here is 47 inches. 4 feet would be right about here, but I'm gonna give myself a little bit extra. I feel like it's better if I make this all one piece and it's all welded from all the way over here. I didn't really film me cutting out the plates since that's pretty boring and repetitive and it took me a while, but I did use my new little plasma cutter to cut all of the kind of round edges. I used the saw blade for the straight edges. This is kind of what we got now. I did remove the gas tank. I also did cut these rear bed mounts. They're pretty much like those back here. So I cut those, I grinded those smooth. So now that the plates will actually sit in there smooth. I was going to cut the shock mounts off and completely remove the shocks since I'm probably going to do hydraulics on this thing. But I think for now, I'll just kind of work around them. I'll leave them there, and then when I do the hydraulics, then I'll cut those off and then do what I'm gonna do. Right here you can see we got the C-notch already cut out for the little pipe notch we did, and then this little section that's cut out is for the leaf spring hanger right here. So that's gonna go around, and I'm gonna weld this in because these from factory aren't welded on the sides, they're just welded on the top. So I'm gonna weld it on the sides, and then I'm gonna weld this bracket to the frame and to the plate, so it's all going to be kind of held together. I think I have everything prepped and ready to start welding. I already have the frame pretty much stripped from all the brackets and everything. I'm still going to clean it up a bit, but as far as that could be all be done after. I also cut this bed mount. I have one right here, and I kept that one so when the bed comes down it has something to stop on. I'd rather have these as security, that way the bed doesn't come down like from momentum and then it hits the cab because it comes down so much. It's gonna go like this, and then this piece is gonna go on like that. I got this whole rear section done. Now it's time to start plating the frame. I'll kind of walk you guys through everything. That way it all kind of makes sense. In here I have a 2-inch piece that has a rosette weld right there. What a rosette weld is, it's pretty much a little hole like this. And then how you weld it is you just weld it in a circle and you kind of fill it with weld. So now that, it's called a rosette weld because it looks like a little rose. But now that is locked in place, so that inner sleeve that you can see in here, the 2-inch piece, can't slide out because it's being grabbed by that. And then I also put a little bit right here so it can't slide out. On top of that, this little spacer piece goes over that, and it's a perfect fit. So this can't break off even if the welds fail, because the spacer goes all the way back here. So this can't break off because this whole piece is in here. Not really to hold the weight, more to just hold this spacer piece to the frame. So this is welded to this, so it can't, you know, fall off. The inner piece is welded over here, and it's welded to this on the inside. So now these two cannot slide out unless I cut all these welds and I drill out this. And then this 2.5 inch piece of square tubing is just welded onto the back. Obviously right here on all 4 sides, you can see the welds. I did bevel everything. I even beveled this spot right here. So you can see it's already a round edge to begin with, and I even beveled that to get as much penetration as I could. I got the frame prepped for the plate, and by prepping, what I mean is I got rid of all of the undercoating on the frame. Now it kind of does suck because Nissan did make a pretty good product, so it doesn't come off very easily, which is good if you want to keep it. But if you want to remove it in order to get a good weld, it kind of sucks. I used a combination of the flap disc and a wire wheel on the drill to get in the tight spots, and we got it all prepped and cleaned and ready to go. That way we can actually weld straight to the bare metal rather than having the weld get contaminated with the undercoating. All of the plating is now on, so now it's time to start welding. Now, since the frame is 1/8 inch thick and the plate is 3/16, I have to be careful not to warp the frame. So I'm gonna have to weld little sections and then jump around. That way I don't get one section hot, because if I were to weld this whole top piece, this thing would just warp and flex and do a bunch of weird stuff. So I'm probably just gonna weld maybe from tack to tack, and then tack to tack, and move around the whole entire frame, and hopefully try not to get it so hot. Now, since I had to remove the gas tank because I had to cut all these brackets and do this plating in here, I have to put those back on. I'm going to bolt it up over here on the original position. I'm going to bolt up this bracket that goes onto the gas tank, so that's going to bolt up there, and then this piece is going to bolt on to this, everything like factory, and then I'm going to weld this to the plate that I did, the 3/16 plate, like that. Obviously I have to clean it and grind it for it to fit right, but it'll pretty much be like the OEM Nissan setup. There we go. So that's how it's gonna be. Now we got all this bolted up. I got the wood as a little kind of shim, and then you can see how it's gonna get welded to the frame. Now I have to grind this back, that way it's even, because the plasma cut that I did in there was kind of rough since I didn't have a lot of space. And then I have to prep all this material here, that way I can weld this all, and it's a nice good weld. Alrighty guys, well I think I'm just about done. Now I still have to do a couple more welds, but I think I'm going to do that off camera. For example, I have to weld that back piece right there on both sides of the inside, and then I have to do the outside of the C-notch in here, but I'm going to have to remove the wheels for that. I just wanted to make sure that everything else got welded before I welded that with the wheels off, just to prevent any warping. Now I tried my best to keep it from warping, but I'm assuming that it did warp just because it's super thin. It's 1/8 inch thin, and I'm putting 3/16 plates. I still have a couple more things I have to button up. Like I said, throw a little couple welds that I've missed, make sure I didn't miss any other underneath, make sure everything's good. And then I have to still come back and grind all of my welds. That way it can look flush. My goal is to make it look like this square tube where it just has a nice radius on the edge and you don't see any welds or any seams or anything like that. But Once again, I need to get this thing running so I can take it to work tomorrow. I think what I'm going to do for now is just put some self-etching primer for bare metal all over all the welds, all over the bare spots. That way we don't get any rust. So I'll rock it like this, throw the bed back on, drive it around, and then when I pull the bed back off to start doing the rack, or whenever I have a chance on a weekend, pull the bed off and grind all of the welds and make it all nice and smooth and pretty, and cut the shock mounts off and make some new mounts for the hydraulic cylinders that we're going to be installing. At least that is the plan, of course. But for now, I'm going to quickly get some primer on here, that way none of this rust, because that would suck if all of this hard work that I put into this started to rust. I know there's a couple of you who think that I'm professional and I have the fanciest tools and that's why I'm able to do what I do. But realistically, guys, I'm just a kid just learning. I had no idea how to do a C-notch, and I learned in this video. This is my very first time doing it. I also have never reinforced a frame. This is my first time doing it. It just took a lot of research to try and figure out what exactly I wanted to do. As far as welder, I'm using a Harbor Freight welder. As far as plasma cutter, you guys don't need a plasma cutter. The one that I'm using is actually from Amazon. I think it was about 200 bucks. So super budget friendly, but you don't need a plasma cutter. It just makes it a little bit easier. I know a lot of people like to talk smack on Harbor Freight welders. And yes, you know, they're not the best. Millers are better and Lincolns are better and all that. But at the end of the day, the way I see it is, if you have a badass $10,000 welder, but you don't know how to weld, what good does it do you to brag that you have a good welder? Like, it really just, it doesn't help you at all. So I think it's better to go out there, get a decent Harbor Freight welder and practice and practice and practice and just try to get as best as you can. Because there's also no sense in buying a $10,000 welder or some badass welder if you don't know how to weld and trying to learn on that. It's just going to be extremely frustrating because you spent so much money and you don't even know how to use the damn thing. I always recommend a Harbor Freight welder. Like I said, I'm able to do things like this and I'm at home and I'm able to get the job done. If I can do this, you guys can do this for sure. Like I said, I don't have too much knowledge. I'm pretty much just learning as I'm going, and I'm documenting the whole entire process for you guys to watch and hopefully gain some knowledge off of my mistakes. Alrighty guys, so I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and most important, I hope you guys found it useful. Now, if you guys have any questions on how to do a C-notch or a pipe notch or to reinforce your frame, definitely put it down in the comment section and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability, or you guys can directly message me on Instagram, which is where I'm mostly active, and all that will be down in the description below. But with all that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out, guys.